Thank you for tuning in to the Tech Guys Who Invest podcast, where you learn how to turn your active wages into passive wealth by investing in income-producing assets. Now, here's your host, Kevin Galang.
Welcome, everyone, to the Tech Guys Who Invest podcast, where I teach you how to invest wisely and safely so that you can transform your working income into passive wealth for you and your family. If you're listening to this podcast, I know that you're busy, but you still want helpful information. So as part of a new format for the Tech Guys Who Invest podcast, I'll be giving you a too long didn't read. Well, in this case, it's a too long didn't listen, and that will be up front with each new episode. And of course, if you want more, because I'll go into greater detail about the topic in question, you can listen till the end. Now, there are two parts of the title for this week's episode. Welcome to Tech Guys Who Invest 2.0 and the good and bad of passive investing. With TGWI 2.0, a couple of things are changing. You may have noticed that the host is now just Kevin and we don't mention Adam. Adam is stepping away from the show to spend quality time with his family and focus on his career. So you'll have to deal with just listening to me. If you miss Adam like I do, you can always ping him via email or LinkedIn. Secondly, while TGWI 1.0 was all about educating you on how to invest wisely and safely, today's version, we're going to take it a step further and will be all about how to take your active income and turning it into passive wealth. I'll take you through things to think about when passively investing, the pros, the cons, the macroeconomics of it, and really anything I learned that will help us both create passive wealth. So here's a skinny on the 3 pros and 3 cons about passive investing in real estate. The 3 good things about passive investing: first and foremost, you're passive. You never have to lift a finger and your money makes money. Secondly, you can invest in larger deals. Typically, passive investors will pool their money and resources together to buy larger assets, things like self-storage, mobile home parks, commercial buildings, or apartment complexes. Your money can acquire larger properties as you do things together. Third, you get diversification. You don't have to put all of your eggs into one basket. You can invest in multiple different assets to maximize your return and spread out your risk. Now, here are the bad things about passive investing. First, you're giving up control. You're investing in a deal that someone else is managing. You aren't driving the day-to-day operations. Second, you're temporarily illiquid. When you passively invest in real estate, your money will be tied up for a given time. Depending on the deal, that could be as short as a year or as long as 5 years or 10 years. It really depends on that specific deal. And third, there are prerequisites to investing. You may have to be an accredited investor, which means you have to make a certain amount of income or have a certain net worth value minus your primary residence. And you may have to have a minimum investment to invest in a specific deal. All right, that's your too long didn't listen version of today's episode. If you want more detail, keep tuning in. And if you have questions, shoot me an email at kevin@tgwipodcast.com. All right, thank you for tuning back into the Tech Guys Who Invest podcast. It's been months since I released an episode, and I have to say I have missed it. I've missed learning new things about investing and then sharing it with all of you. I've missed answering your questions about investing and networking over a common interest like real estate. So it's really good to be back. Now, first things first, let's talk about Adam's departure. It would make this show way more interesting if there was some drama associated with him leaving. Maybe a story where he had to double-cross me and then I triple-crossed him and then lawyers got involved, but that's not the case. So if you're looking for that kind of drama, I'd recommend a show like Ozark or Succession. Actually, what really happened was Adam and I experienced burnout. Between managing the podcast, or multiple podcasts in my case, actively investing, having full-time demanding jobs, families, we both got burnt out and decided to take a break. During the hiatus, Adam made the honorable decision to focus his time, energy, and passion on his family and career. Of course, I admire that in him. And of course, I respect that decision and wish him nothing but the best. Now, when Adam told me he was stepping away from the show, I was totally bummed out. I really enjoyed having him as a co-host. I loved our chemistry. It was just great working with him. Him stepping away, or making that choice to step away, really got me thinking. It made me reevaluate, do I really need 3 different podcasts? In fact, I was feeling completely overwhelmed. So much so that that feeling of being overwhelmed prevented me from creating content. And I realized that I kind of forced myself into burnout. With everything else that I mentioned previously and the additional podcast, it was just too much. Instead, what I'm going to do moving forward is I'm only going to focus on the Tech Guys Who Invest podcast. That's not to say I won't share the resources and knowledge that I've gained from note investing. I will promise to give you access to all of that information as well. But for now, I am going to really focus on providing deep quality content for the Tech Guys Who Invest podcast. Another change to the Tech Guys Who Invest podcast will be the release schedule. For Tech Guys Who Invest 1.0, I'm sure you were used to the release schedule of 1 episode per week. However, what I'm going to do moving forward is release episodes once every 3 weeks. Now, there is some reasoning behind that release schedule. First, it fits the best with everything else that I've got going on in life to release once every 3 weeks. And secondly, due to the nature of me wanting to deep dive into whatever the topic may be, I want to give myself enough time to provide research, to talk to experts that are going to have information. So I have enough lead time to get all that information to provide you with an episode. Okay, so we've covered what's going to change and what you can expect moving forward from the podcast. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. Passive investing. You might be thinking to yourself, so what? Is passive investing really all that great? Should I even care? And is it truly passive, or is it just a marketing term people like to throw out? Well, first, I would say that wise passive investing is never truly passive. There is going to be an active investing component to it. What I mean is that as a wise passive investor, if you're going to invest passively into a syndication, which is where other passive investors pool their money to buy a large asset like an apartment complex or a mobile home park, then you're going to vet the operator or sponsor, the person managing the deal. You're going to talk to your CPA about how this can affect your tax burden. You're going to maybe consult your spouse or partner. You're going to research the asset at the highest level to understand what it is you're investing in. So just because you're passive does not mean you should be ignorant. It's your hard-earned money after all, and no one's going to take care of you better than you. And yes, passive investing is that great. Investing in general is that great. If you weren't born wealthy, then chances are you're trading your time for money. But you can only work so many hours a day, and you can work only so many years in your life. There's also a cap on how much you can earn. On the other hand, when you invest your money works for you. Even when you sleep, decide to go on vacation, spend time with your family, as you're working out, it's going to be working for you. It never gets tired. So it's greatly efficient at growing itself. Now that we're on the same page, that even passive investing has some level of work to it, let's talk about that first benefit of being passive. So in real estate, you need 2 things to get a deal done: the deal and the money. Active investors are going to be the ones who find the deal, and passive investors are going to be the ones who fund it. One thing you'll come across as a passive investor are syndications. As I mentioned previously, a syndication is when a number of investors who are similar to you pool their money together to buy a large asset that's usually income producing, like an apartment complex or an RV park. Now, in this context, the active investors or the syndicators are going to be finding the deal, analyzing the deal, managing the deal, and raising money from investors. So as a passive investor, you're really not handling any of the day-to-day responsibilities. You're not talking to the managing contractors. You're not talking to property managers. You're not analyzing the deal or navigating the books. You're not doing any of those things. That's all done by the sponsors who you get behind. As a passive investor, your work is really complete once you hand that money over to your partners. Then your money starts to grow, and the amount of work you may do, which might be optional, is to get update calls where your sponsors are going to walk you through the property. If it's an apartment complex, for example, or if you're revamping and renovating an RV park, your sponsors will walk you through what's going on. They'll keep you updated. And another thing you might do as a passive investor is vote, right? You may also be called a limited partner. So you have a limited voice in some of the major decisions of a deal, such as when to sell, refinance, things of that nature. But for all intents and purposes, you're not lifting a finger. You are truly passive. And the second benefit of passively investing is that you're able to participate in much larger deals. When I was first starting out, I didn't quite understand the idea of partnering with others. I thought I wanted the returns to be all of mine. Then a mentor of mine said it best. He said, a percentage of something is better than 100% of nothing. So when you think about being a passive investor and you're pooling your money together, that's exactly what's happening. You're now able to buy larger assets that you wouldn't otherwise be able to acquire on your own. The down payment alone is going to be somewhere around 6 figures. Now, I don't know many investors, I don't know them yet, who have 6 figures lying around in their bank account or IRAs that could cover the down payment of an asset like that. But I do know multiple investors who can invest 25 to 100K. So by getting together, investors are able to now acquire an asset that they couldn't buy by themselves. The third benefit of being a passive investor is diversification. You're not putting all of your money or your eggs into a single basket or deal. By diversifying your investments, the idea is that you maximize the potential for growth because your success is not predicated on just one deal performing well. If all your money is in a single deal, for whatever reason, if that deal misses the mark, then your growth goes out the window as well. Let's say you invest in 2 different deals. Then there's a chance that both of those deals do well, and there's also a chance that one of those deals does poorly while the other does well. In the latter situation, the loss of one deal is balanced out by the growth of the other deal. Here's how this could work. Let's say you have $100,000 to invest. If you invest all of that into a syndication that's going to purchase an apartment complex, if that deal goes well, your investment grows. If that deal doesn't do so well, then you could potentially lose all your money, or you wouldn't see the return that you were expecting. It's all contingent on how well that apartment complex performs. Well, instead, you could parlay that $100,000 into 2 to 4 investments depending on the minimum investment requirements that you're coming across. You could invest $50,000 into that same apartment deal. Then you could invest the remaining $50,000 to a note investing fund. Your risk is now spread across 2 different assets within real estate. So you're now open to the possibility that an apartment deal and the note investing fund perform well, while protecting yourself from hinging on the success of just one deal. Okay, now let's talk about the cons of passively investing in real estate. I may be biased in thinking that passive investing is really that amazing, but let's be real, it's not for everyone, and of course, there are some downsides to them. There are multiple cons of being a passive investor, but here are 3 main reasons why someone would want to avoid investing passively. The first downside is that a passive investor gives up control. By the very nature of being a passive investor, you're not looking to be active or have any control of the deal. However, that doesn't work for everyone. I know plenty of people within my circle who are control freaks, and they would want to dot every I and cross every T themselves. For those people, investing passively might not be the best fit. As a passive investor, you're vetting the deal and the operator. If you're not happy with the business strategy or don't believe in the operator, you can't change either of those things for that specific deal. You could voice your opinion, but I don't think that would really change anything because those operators would probably just tell you to pound sand. Your options are really to either invest or look for a different deal. And depending on the syndication, as a passive investor or limited partner, you may have a limited vote on big deal decisions, like when to sell, as I mentioned earlier. So if you need more control than that in order to invest, then passive investing might not be for you. Another reason why people wouldn't want to be a passive investor is because you are temporarily illiquid. Here's what I mean. Say you invest $50,000 into a mobile home park syndication. As part of the commitment to invest, you're also committing your time. That $50,000 is meant to grow, and it takes time to grow money, especially if it's what we call a value add opportunity. So when you sign the documents and transfer the money, that money is going to be part of a deal that's set for about 5 to 7 years. Depending on how the deal is structured, you may or may not be able to take an early withdrawal after a given time frame of maybe 1 to 2 years, depending on the deal. And if you do withdraw, you will likely get hit with an early withdrawal penalty. So if you're reviewing a deal and you've got money in your IRA or in your bank account, whatever the case may be, and you think to yourself, hey, there's a good chance I'm going to need it before the deal is done, it might not be a good idea to invest with those funds. Now, the third reason behind not wanting to be a passive investor are the prerequisites to investing. One prereq, for example, is whether or not you are an accredited investor. As of this recording in March of 2022, an accredited investor is currently defined in 2 ways. If you file your taxes single, then you have to make a yearly income of $200,000 for the past 2 years with a likelihood of reaching that same income amount in the upcoming year. If you're married and filed jointly, then the yearly income amount jumps to $300,000. The other way you can be an accredited investor is to have a net worth of $1 million minus your primary residence. Now, this, of course, depends on the type of deal, which we'll get into. You'll hear things like 506B, 506C. We can get into that in a later episode. But as an accredited investor, that's how you will define yourself. The second prereq to being a passive investor are investing minimums. Let's say if you're listening to this and you're accredited, you will then likely have to experience a minimum investment. That might be something like $25K, $50K, or $100K. It really depends on the deal. Unfortunately, if you don't have that money, it doesn't matter if you're accredited or not, because if you can't meet that minimum investment, chances are you won't be able to do that deal. There you have it for the 3 pros and 3 cons of passive investing. Now, whether or not passive investing is right for you is something only you can answer. All I can do is provide you with information and different perspectives on it. I would, however, highly recommend speaking to people in your network, like your CPA, your lawyer, your financial advisor, your partner or spouse, anybody that you need to speak with to help you determine if it's the right decision for you. Now, this was a lengthy episode, and it was great to be back. But most importantly, thank you for tuning in. I'm looking forward to bringing you more content to help you turn your active wages into passive wealth. If you have episode ideas, want to say hello, feel free to shoot me an email at kevin@tgwipodcast.com. Until next time, everyone. That's it for the Tech Guys Who Invest podcast. We hope you learned something new to help you get one step closer to turning your active wages into passive wealth. If you want to connect with me or book a time on my calendar, head over to tgwipodcast.com/contact. To subscribe to the show and become a TGW insider to get more investing nuggets, head over to tgwipodcast.com/subscribe. Lastly, it would mean the world to me if you would leave me a review on whatever podcast platform you're tuning in from. That way I can improve the show and bring you the highest quality content. Thanks, everybody.